Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the big matchup coming up here in the Big Ten in Week 5 of this 2022 college football season. And it's going to be over the Michigan Wolverines and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 5. And it's a rematch of last year's Big Ten title game. You got Michigan, who is ranked in the top 4, and this team is in a great position to make another run for the college football playoff. But first, they got to go through Iowa City. And the Hawkeyes, of course, are a team that have pulled some major upsets at home in years past, and Iowa looks to do so in this matchup as well. Iowa's 3-1. They're unranked, but this is still a Hawkeye team that is very much able to be a big contender in the Big Ten this season. So a pretty crucial one for both these teams coming up here in Week 5. We'll be covering a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with their team trends. Michigan beat Maryland 34-27 in their Week 4 matchup. So it was a good win for Michigan. It was a very close game. Maryland was extremely competitive there, and in the end, Michigan got the win, but, it was extremely close. So for Michigan, this is definitely a matchup where they need to prove themselves and whether or not Michigan is for real, as they really haven't this season so far. They've dominated their first 3 games, but they beat Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn, 3 teams that are some of the worst in the FBS this season, the entire FBS. So for Michigan, going on the road, first road game of the season, this is really where we're going to start to learn about who Michigan really is. And they're taking on Iowa, of course, a team that just beat Rutgers 27-10. So, Iowa, of course, being a team that has really struggled on offense so far this season. It was good to see this team score 27, and defensively they're extremely strong. So, the Hawkeyes, they got a chance in this matchup, especially with how good their defense has been so far this season. And they are 3-1 to start off the year. Games be on Saturday, October 1st in Iowa City. So the Hawks, of course, the home team for this matchup, which is a huge advantage for Iowa. This is a team that is very dangerous at home. We've seen this many times in years past. Iowa takes on a big opponent, a highly ranked opponent at home, and they've been able to be very competitive or even pull off the upset multiple times. So that is something to really keep an eye on as we head into this matchup. And your kickoff is noon Eastern. Spread's going Michigan here by 11. So Wolverines are favored by touchdown and a half for this matchup. Over under is 43. And your FPI is going Michigan 76.8%. So that's just the opening spread, too. That could change over the course of the week, but that's how it looks as of right now. Series history, Michigan leads at 43-15. They've won the past 2 matchups against Iowa, but Iowa has won twice against Michigan in the past 5 matchups, even though Michigan has overall dominated the series. And, of course, when they played in the Big Ten Championship last season, Michigan just dominated Iowa from the start. Iowa really never stood a chance. Iowa was a really good team last season. They definitely had talent, but in the end, Michigan was simply the better team. They beat them 42-3 in Indianapolis last season. So that is something to definitely keep in mind as we head into this matchup. Michigan dominated this team last year. Stat comparison, Michigan 50 points per game so far this season, 11 points allowed. So this is a team that's been really good on both sides of the ball so far this season. 254 passers a game, 234 rush yards. And for yards allowed, 135 passing, 109 for rushing. So especially if you look at the passing defense so far this season for Michigan, it's been really impressive. 135 pass yards allowed so far this season on average. But then again, they've played some teams that are primarily rushing offenses, and especially, if you look at Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn for the most part, those teams don't pass the ball very well. But as for Iowa, 17 points per game. That is a rough stat for Iowa. Only 17 points per game through 4 games this season. 5 points allowed, though. So on the flip side, this team is one of the best, if not the best, team in the country in terms of defensive points allowed per game. 131 pass yards a game, 101 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 163 passing, 73 for rushing. So it's a really interesting team here in Iowa. This is a team that is really good on defense. This season they've been outstanding on defense, but their offense has been extremely poor at times. If you look at their matchups so far this season, the last 2 matches have been pretty good. They beat Rutgers 27-10. That was definitely the best game, the most impressive game of the season so far for Iowa, was going on the road to Rutgers and scoring 27 there. Of course, they shut out Nevada 27-0 in what was a very interesting game. That game was finished, I think after midnight because of a delay. But they still won it, shut out Nevada, lost Iowa State 7-10, beat South Dakota State 7-3. That is a perfect representation of this Iowa team. Their offense only scored 7 points, but they still got the win there. And by the way, those 7 points were not a touchdown. That was 2 safeties and a field goal. So Iowa's offense needs to be a lot better if they want any chance of being a top competitor in the Big Ten this season. And as for Michigan, beat Maryland 34-27, shut out UConn 59-zip, beat Hawaii 56-10, and beat Colorado State 51-7. So they've been pretty dominant so far this season for the most part. Your key points: Michigan 4-0, first road game of the season, and you could say their first real test of the season. I mean, Maryland looked like a pretty good football team last week, and they were definitely very competitive against Michigan. J.J. McCarthy, quarterback, he's got a high ceiling and a low floor. That's kind of the thing about him, is I feel like he's got a higher ceiling than Cade McNamara, but at the same time, his floor is definitely lower. I mean, he was sloppy at times against Maryland last week. But he's got tremendous potential, and really, I mean, he can lead Michigan to a great season. He can lead them to the college football playoff, that's for sure. But of course, he does have a bit of inexperience and still has got a bit to, he still has got room to grow for sure. And Michigan, they've been strong on both sides of the ball. So that's something they do have an advantage on Iowa, is that they are strong on both sides of the ball and not just defensively, for example. For Iowa, they've improved over their first 4 games. I would say this team has been, I mean, they looked pretty good against Rutgers for the most part, but of course, that is Rutgers, who is expected to be one of the bottom teams in the Big Ten. Offense will really determine how good Iowa's going to be this season. If their offense continues to be very underwhelming, I mean, it's going to be tough for Iowa to be a contender this season. I mean, offensively, I mean, Spencer Petras, if you look at his stats so far this season, 524 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Those are his passing stats. He has 1 touchdown through 4 games and 2 interceptions. So, I mean, Spencer Petras is not a good quarterback, just to say it straight up. I mean, even the rushing game hasn't been very good. Of course, they had Tyler Goodson last season, but he's gone. And so they've relied on Caleb Johnson so far this season for the most part, who's got 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this offense is just not very good, and they've got a lot of room to improve if they want to be a big contender once again. I mean, their defense is the exact same story last year. I mean, Iowa's offense was better last year than it is this season so far. But I mean, Iowa's defense was good enough to allow them to be a national contender, but it's just their offense that came back to bite in most of their losses last season. So that's just the crucial thing for Iowa. I mean, if both sides of the ball were good, this would be a Hawkeye team that would be ranked in the top 10, pretty consistently, especially over the past couple of seasons. But that's it. Let's get to the prediction here for Michigan and Iowa. Your big matchup coming up here in the Big Ten in Week 5 of action. I'm going Michigan here. 24-17 is my predicted final score. Wolverines are just simply the better team here. Iowa's a team that I feel like has got tremendous potential to pull an upset on Michigan. I mean, for all we know, the way Michigan's offense has been really good so far this season. They scored 34 against Maryland, kind of struggled at first against them. But, I mean, Iowa's defense will need to really come to play in this matchup because, I mean, Iowa going up against what is a pretty good Michigan defense. I mean, it's going to be tough for Iowa to score more than 20 points or even more than 15 points in this matchup the way that they've been playing so far this season. So, I mean, Iowa's defense is going to have to play really well. And in the end, I feel like they allow somewhere between 20 and 30 points. And in the end, it's just going to be tough for them to win this game in the end. So I'm going to go Michigan 24-17. I'll say 55% towards Michigan. So I think Iowa stands a chance here. They definitely have a chance to pull this upset. And I'm pretty comfortable saying Iowa's going to cover the spread as well. It's 11 points towards Michigan right now. And I feel like, I mean, Iowa could lose by 7 to 10. I don't think they lose by 2 touchdowns. So I think Michigan covering the spread is a pretty easy bet here. And a pretty comfortable bet as well, especially if the spread stays at where it's at. Over-under is 43. I'll take the under for this one. I mean, if you're going to take Iowa to win, take the under 10,000% because, I mean, Iowa's not going to score too many points. So if you think Iowa's going to win, take the under. If you're going to think Michigan is going to win, you can go either way here. I'm going to take the under personally with Michigan winning and Iowa covering the spread. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.